In an older part of Cleveland, Ohio, there was a quiet but somewhat deserted neighborhood where a 21-year-old college student named Daniel moved into a rented house with his two friends, Matt and Chris. The house was an old Victorian-style building, and the three of them picked it only because the rent was dirt cheap, way lower than anything else nearby. The landlord told them honestly that it was kind of a fixer-upper, needed a bit of repair, but the guys thought it was a steal before the semester started. When they first walked in, the house smelled faintly of moisture. The wooden stairs creaked under their feet, and the light filtering in through the old windows gave the whole place a weird, vintage movie vibe. But what disturbed Daniel the most was the basement, dark, damp, and cold, with old wooden stairs that felt creepy even before you stepped on them. When they asked the landlord about it, he casually said, "Just don't use the basement ... It's old and the wiring's bad. You won't need it anyway." Daniel didn't think much of it then, but something about how the landlord said it didn't feel casual, almost like he was hiding something. The first few days were normal. Unpacking, pizza nights, getting ready for school. But the very first night, after everyone had gone to bed, Daniel heard a strange sound coming from the basement, like something heavy being slowly dragged across metal. It was faint, something most people wouldn't notice, but Daniel's ears caught it. He told himself it was probably just old pipes or maybe rats. Still, it kept him awake. The next morning, he told Matt and Chris, who just laughed and said, "Welcome to Haunted Cleveland." Daniel tried to laugh along, but deep down, something started to settle in his chest. Something cold. On the third evening, coming back from campus, he noticed the basement light was on. All the other lights in the house were off, and he was sure no one had gone downstairs. He opened the door and looked down toward the basement steps. The light was dim, like an old bulb that could burn out at any second. He thought about going down but decided against it. "I'll check tomorrow," he told himself, and went upstairs. But that same night, around 2 a.m., the doorbell rang. Not loud, just a single soft press, like someone barely touched the button. Daniel sat up in bed, heart racing. He walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. No one. He opened the door and looked outside. Nothing. No wind, no movement. The trees were completely still. Then he glanced over at the basement stairs, and he thought he saw a faint shadow move, not fast like an animal, not clearly like a person, but slow and cautious, as if it didn't want to be seen but slipped up just enough to be noticed. Daniel stepped back, throat dry. He shut the basement door and shoved a chair in front of it. That night, he had a dream. He was walking down the basement steps, and at the very bottom stood a blurry figure. Its face was unclear, but it was saying something, whispering slowly in a rhythmic tone. Daniel woke up in a cold sweat, his breathing heavy. In the morning, he told Matt and Chris about the dream, and again, they just laughed it off as paranoia. But Daniel knew something was off. Something only he could feel. That day, he decided to place an old phone on record mode near the basement stairs overnight, just to capture any sounds. If he was really losing it, the audio would prove it was all in his head. But part of him was scared, not of hearing nothing, but of what he might hear. The rest of the day passed slowly. Daniel couldn't focus on anything else. All he could think about was, what will I hear tonight? And if something is down there, is it even human? Or something that looks like it might be, but isn't? As night fell, and the lights went out, that old phone sat quietly at the top of the basement stairs, its recorder running in the dark, in a place where no one could see. Or maybe someone was watching. Daniel just didn't know who. The night Daniel left that old phone recording near the basement stairs, he barely slept. He did fall asleep eventually, but his dreams kept dragging him back to the same image, the stairs, the basement door, something pulling him downward. And every time it happened, it felt like his breath stopped. The moment he woke up the next morning, his mind went straight to the recording. He grabbed the phone in a rush. The battery was almost dead, but the file had saved. Sitting on his bed, he hit play. At first, it was just silence, the occasional sound of wind, the creak of old wood. But then at exactly 2:47 a.m., a whisper. Faint, close, like it was right beside the mic. "Don't go upstairs, don't go upstairs." Daniel's entire body froze. The voice sounded human, but something about it was wrong, like it wasn't coming from someone's throat, but from inside the walls of the basement itself. He replayed it, this time with headphones, and there it was again. The same phrase, the same tone, repeating slowly, over and over. "Don't go upstairs." His heartbeat was pounding. This wasn't radio static. It wasn't a glitch. It was someone's voice. Or something that sounded too much like a person. Later that day, Chris came home annoyed, complaining that his desk chair had been moved and his drawer was wide open, but he insisted he'd been at his girlfriend's all night and hadn't been home. Daniel didn't say anything to him. Instead, he went straight to Matt and played the audio. As soon as Matt heard the whisper through the headphones, he yanked them off and snapped, "Stop it, man. This ghost obsession of yours is messing with my head. It's probably just old audio distortion or something." Daniel stayed quiet, but he watched Matt carefully. He knew Matt was scared, but wouldn't admit it. And maybe that made it worse. A few days later, something else happened. One morning, all three of them woke up and saw the basement door was halfway open. That door was always shut, always locked at night. Matt said maybe Chris had gone down for water or something, but Chris swore he hadn't touched it. Daniel knew for a fact he hadn't gone down there. The three of them just stood there, staring at the door. It was open inward, and a faint cold draft was brushing against their legs. Without saying a word, Daniel shut it and locked it again. But from that day on, something changed. It was like the silence in the house wasn't just quiet anymore. It had weight. You could feel it. That evening, while walking near the house, Daniel ran into an old neighbor, a woman who'd lived there for over 40 years. She stopped him and said, "You're staying in that old house, right? I know the rent's cheap. But have you heard anything in the basement?" Daniel froze. She went on, "There was a boy who used to live there. He stayed in the basement, studied down there. Then one day, he just vanished. No signs, no sound. The cops came, but they never found a thing." A chill ran down Daniel's spine. This was that house. And maybe that same basement. Very next day, while putting some boxes in the attic, Daniel found an old dusty cardboard box. Inside were some old papers, maps, and a folded newspaper clipping. He opened it. The headline read, "Local teen vanishes in East 67th Street basement. No foul play confirmed." Next to it was a blurry photo of a boy with a haunted look in his eyes. Daniel's mind flashed to his dreams. That shadowy face at the bottom of the stairs. Was this him? That night, Matt and Chris went to a party, and Daniel was home alone. Around 2 a.m., while sitting in his room, a chill ran through his entire body, like something from the basement had started moving upward. First came a faint shuffling, then the soft, deliberate sound of bare feet on the stairs. Daniel couldn't move. He picked up his phone, but his hands were shaking. Then, that voice again. "Don't go upstairs." But this time it was louder, clearer, like it was coming from right behind the door. Daniel's throat tightened. He looked at the door. His shadow on the floor started to flicker. The voice wasn't just behind him anymore. It was all around him, like the walls themselves were whispering. He crawled to his bed, pulled the blanket over his head, and shut his eyes tight. But one question kept echoing inside him. If he doesn't want to come upstairs, then why? Is he climbing the stairs every night? And if he's still in the basement, then who's walking above him when everyone's asleep? Daniel was exhausted, not just physically, but mentally. He didn't trust anyone anymore, not even his own senses. Every night, the strange noises coming from the basement, the whispers, the heavy shadows, it had all drained him of sleep and sanity. That night, while Matt and Chris were out and he was home alone, Daniel decided enough was enough. He wasn't going to keep running from it. He needed answers. He turned on his phone's camera and placed it on top of his closet, aimed so it could capture his bed and the bedroom door clearly. He put on headphones and played white noise, telling himself it was to block distractions, but the truth was, he couldn't bear to hear any more whispering from the basement. His heart was racing with fear, but his body was worn down. Next morning, Daniel woke up early. First thing he did was check the footage. He scrubbed through the timeline, scanning through different parts of the night. But at exactly 3:12 a.m., his fingers stopped. The room was quiet, and Daniel was asleep in bed. Then, slowly, really slowly, the door opened. 1 inch, 2 inches. Then about 3 inches wide. No one visible. But in the dark gap between the door and the frame, a faint shadow. Like someone was peeking in, just watching, not stepping in. The shadow stood still for a few seconds. Then the door quietly closed itself. Daniel felt like his heart dropped. This wasn't a dream. It wasn't his imagination. He zoomed in, brightened the image, and yes, the figure looked human. But its posture, its stance, and those eyes, they weren't right. He immediately showed the footage to Matt and Chris. Matt got angry. "That's not funny, man. If this is a prank, just admit it." But when Daniel showed them the lock chain that was still hooked on the inside of the door, Matt went silent. No one could have gotten in, and yet, someone was standing there, watching. That's when all three agreed. No more guessing. That night, they would go down to the basement and see what was really down there. As night fell, they grabbed their flashlights, fully charged phones, and opened the door to the one place they'd always avoided. The moment they stepped on the stairs, the dampness and cold wrapped around their faces like a warning. Each wooden step creaked under their weight, and the air below felt colder, heavier. The basement, which once seemed small and closed off, now felt weirdly large, like a wall had been moved, or a new path opened. In one dark corner, when they pointed the light, they saw something scratched into the wall. It wasn't paint. It had been carved with something sharp. "I told you not to come down." And just beneath it, there was fresh dust on the floor, like someone had walked through there recently. Daniel's chest tightened. This wasn't old. This had happened recently. Suddenly, Chris screamed, "Something's behind us." His flashlight hit the floor, and he took off running toward the stairs. Matt and Daniel followed, breathing heavy, stumbling as they climbed up. But when they reached the top and tried to open the door, it wouldn't budge. It was locked. They froze. The latch was engaged from the outside. Someone had locked them in, but no one was supposed to be up there. Then they heard it, the whisper again. "Don't go upstairs. Don't go upstairs." But this time, it wasn't coming from the basement. It was coming from above them. Like whatever had been upstairs was now downstairs, watching them. Matt slammed his shoulder into the door, breaking it open. They bolted upstairs, racing through the house and out the front door. Chris tripped and fell on the way, but didn't stop running. After that night, he never stepped foot in that house again. Matt stuck around for a few more weeks, but something changed in him. He got quiet, distant. Daniel ended up alone. He told the landlord everything, but the man brushed it off, said it was just young guy's imagination. Daniel didn't argue. He just moved out as quickly as he could. But the story didn't end there. Even now, when he's alone at night, he sometimes pauses, because it feels like someone's breathing behind the walls. And from the basement, he still hears it, that same slow whisper, crystal clear now. "I'm coming upstairs." Jessica had been doing wildlife photography for years. and going out alone into the woods wasn't anything new to her. But this trip, just outside Boise, Idaho, felt different. On Friday morning, she packed up her Jeep with her cameras, camping gear, tent, and laptop, and drove about 40 miles out into a dense, remote forest. She'd picked the location herself. No trails, no tourists, no cell service. Just tall pine trees, moss-covered rocks, and a strange, almost eerie kind of silence. That's what Jessica liked, being far away from people, surrounded by nature. But maybe she didn't realize. People weren't the only thing to be afraid of. Once she arrived, she pulled her Jeep off the path and parked in a clearing where she set up her tent. By early afternoon, she had all 3 of her motion-sensitive infrared cameras in place. One behind the tent on a tall tree, one in the nearby bushes, and one near a narrow trail that led deeper into the woods. She was hoping to catch footage of a mountain lion or maybe some deer. That thrill of the unknown is what kept her coming back. That evening, she lit a small campfire, ate a simple meal, and sat quietly, listening to the wind rustling through the trees and the occasional hoot of an owl. The rest of the forest felt still. Too still. It was quiet, unusually quiet. She wondered if maybe one of her cameras wasn't working, or if the animals had moved elsewhere. But deep down, there was an uneasy feeling like something was nearby, but just out of sight. Still, she brushed it off and went to her tent. The next morning, as soon as the sun came up, Jessica pulled the SD cards from her cameras and started reviewing the footage on her laptop. The first camera showed nothing, just some rustling leaves and a quick flash of a coyote. The second one had a blur behind a bush, but nothing clear. Then she opened the third file, and that's when her fingers stopped. This photo was different. Right in front of the bush, something was peeking up from the ground. A face. A faint, human-looking figure, just the top of its head and eyes, staring directly into the camera. The face had hair, but the eyes were sharp and clear, too clear. And what disturbed her most was how directly it was looking at the lens. Like it knew it was being watched. Jessica's heart started racing. She told herself maybe it was a hunter or another camper. People do wander into the woods without announcing themselves. But when she zoomed in on the photo, the wrinkles on the face, the shape of the eyes, they weren't right, like it was a human. But not quite. She went through the rest of the footage and saw that same face 2 more times within 15 minutes. Each time, it was closer. Same angle, same slow, crawling movement, as if it was sniffing, sensing the camera's presence. Jessica forced herself to stay calm. She was experienced. She wasn't someone who spooked easily. That afternoon, she hiked out to the trail near the third camera, looking for footprints or any sign someone had been there. But the ground was clean, no boot marks, no cigarette butts, not even a food wrapper. Nothing. She stood there, staring at the exact spot where the face had appeared in the frame. And now it was just dry leaves and dirt. She went back to her tent, but now every bush, every tree seemed to be watching her, like she wasn't alone anymore. As evening fell, the wind picked up, and that night inside her tent, Jessica checked her camera batteries. Everything was fine. Around 1 a.m., she suddenly heard a faint noise just outside, like someone walking slowly through dry leaves. She froze, held her breath. She grabbed her flashlight and gently unzipped the tent, peeked out. Nothing, but then her light hit something on a tree, and there, partially hidden behind it, were 2 eyes staring right at her. Round, white, unblinking, and completely still. Before she could even react, the eyes disappeared. Just like that, gone. But the feeling they left behind didn't go away. Those weren't animal eyes. But they didn't feel human either. Jessica woke up the next morning with a strange feeling in her chest. The air inside her tent felt heavy and still, but her body had a chill, like something had been watching her even before she opened her Eyes. She slowly unzipped the tent and stepped out. And when she looked down at the ground in front of her, her heart skipped a beat. Right there in the dirt were strange markings, deep scratches, but not in a straight line. More like someone had crawled on hands and knees. In some places, it looked like long fingernails had dug into the soil, peeling up the earth. Jessica stood there in silence, scanning the woods. Nothing moved. The trees were still, the air was cold, but the silence that used to feel peaceful now felt unsettling. Without wasting time, she pulled the SD cards from her cameras and sat down to check the footage. When she opened the files from the second camera, her fingers froze. There it was, the same face, that blurry figure, now crawling directly toward her tent. In the video, it started just out of frame, then slowly moved into view, crawling on its stomach just like before. But this time, its neck was twisted unnaturally, like a bone was dislocated. Its eyes glowed red in the infrared light. No reaction. No flinching, like it didn't care that it was being watched. Jessica's breathing grew heavy. She checked the next clip. This time, it was from the camera facing her tent, but the angle was slightly off, tilted, like someone had moved it. But Jessica had tied that camera tight to a tree herself, and it wasn't supposed to move. Then, in one frame, something passes by, slow, low to the ground, stopping just near her tent, and vanishing again. Jessica was shaking now. She tried to calm herself, drank some water, checked the wires on her cameras, and told herself maybe it was just the wind. Maybe it was a lost hiker, or a local hunter. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. She didn't want to stay another night. Still, the photographer in her refused to leave without proof. By afternoon, she decided to check behind the tent. And that's when she saw something else. Symbols, weird ones, drawn into the dirt. Circles filled with tangled lines, like someone had scratched them with fingernails or sticks. Some had triangles, others were just shapes she couldn't understand, but they were fresh, like someone had just made them dot as the sun began to set. The forest felt even stranger. No wind, no sound, total stillness. Jessica turned her cameras back on, adjusted the angles, and stayed inside her tent. Around 1:30 a.m., she woke up suddenly, not from a sound, but from a feeling. It was like someone had whispered her name. Jessica, soft, barely a whisper. It didn't feel like it came from outside. It felt like it came from inside her own head. She sat up, flashlight in hand. Everything outside looked still, but even the sound of her own breathing now felt too loud. She slowly unzipped the tent and looked out. Nothing but darkness and the outlines of trees. But even in that darkness, she felt it. Something was out there, watching her, not moving, not blinking, just watching. That night, Jessica stayed awake in her tent with the flashlight by her side, eyes fixed on the little red lights of her cameras, half expecting something to knock or crawl in. Morning brought light, but not peace. She felt exhausted, hollow inside. One thought repeated in her mind: she needed to leave. Still, before packing up, she decided to leave the cameras on for one last night, in case anything got caught on tape. Maybe it would be the proof she needed. Maybe this would be her first and last solo trip. But what Jessica didn't realize was, whatever had been watching her didn't need cameras anymore. It had gotten close enough now, so close that by the next night, it might not wait for the lens. It might go for her breath first. Jessica woke up late that morning, but something felt off. The forest looked the same trees, same surroundings, but the air wasn't like it usually was in the mornings. And the strangest part? Her tent. The zipper was halfway open, even though she clearly remembered zipping it shut tightly the night before. One corner of her sleeping bag was sticking out, like someone had tried to look inside, or maybe even touch it. Everything felt disturbed. She sat outside for a moment, but the peaceful silence she once loved now felt creepy. Without eating anything, she grabbed her laptop, plugged in the SD card, and started checking the footage from the night before, the one she left running for proof. The first few clips were normal, some wind, trees moving, distant rustling. But when she reached the last clip, her face went pale. In the video, Jessica was sleeping inside her tent, turned to the side, breathing softly. But in the corner of the frame, behind the thin mesh layer of the tent, a face was staring in. At first, she thought she was imagining it. But as she paused and played the clip over and over, the face became clearer. Pale, dry skin. Completely black eyes that looked sunken and tired, like they hadn't closed in days. The mouth was slightly open, as if it was whispering something. But there was no sound. And the scariest part, the face didn't move at all. It just stared at her unblinking for several seconds, and then suddenly leaned forward, like trying to look deeper inside the tent. Then, the clip cut off. Jessica felt like something was still watching her. She sat frozen, eyes locked on the screen, her heart pounding louder than her breath. And then, for just a second, she felt it, like someone was standing behind her. Her body went numb. She forced herself to turn around quickly, but there was no one there. Nothing, just cold, heavy air, like someone had just walked away. She knew she couldn't stay any longer. She grabbed everything, the cameras, her backpack, sleeping bag, tent, tossed it all into her Jeep, and took off without looking back. As she drove, she looked at the forest through the window, but it no longer felt peaceful or beautiful. It felt like someone else's territory, something that was still there. And maybe next time, it would come even closer. When Jessica got back to Boise, she went straight to the police station. She showed them all the footage, especially the last clip. Their first reaction? It's probably just a shadow. The forest can mess with cameras. They called it a glitch or lens distortion. But Jessica knew it wasn't a glitch. It was a face. A face that wasn't just watching her. It knew the camera was there too. It understood. The police didn't take any formal action. They just said, "Try not to go out alone," and left it at that. Jessica went back to her apartment, but her mind was still stuck in that forest. She couldn't stop thinking about the face. Weeks later, when she tried to revisit the footage, maybe find more details or another glimpse of that thing, her laptop showed an error. File corrupted. The final clip wouldn't play. The spot where the face appeared now just showed static and blurry noise. Like someone had deleted it on purpose, or like it had never existed. Jessica doesn't go camping alone anymore. She's got new cameras, better lights, stronger gear, but that experience left a crack in her confidence. Even in her apartment, she checks the doors twice before bed and keeps thick curtains over every window. But sometimes when the night is especially quiet, when the air is completely still, she feels it, like something is standing at her window, just beyond the mesh. The same old face. And this time, it isn't just watching. It remembers her. Ethan, a 35-year-old traveling sales executive, was used to moving from city to city. New hotels, new faces, and endless client meetings had become his routine. But this time felt different. For a 3-day business trip in Flagstaff, Arizona, instead of booking a usual hotel room, he chose a wooden cabin on Airbnb. Affordable, charming, and completely isolated. The cabin was tucked away at the edge of a dense pine forest, off the main road, with no other houses for miles. The photos made it look cozy: wooden walls, a small porch, an old fireplace, and a thick forest in the back. To Ethan, it felt like a peaceful retreat, especially for someone constantly on the move. He arrived Friday evening, and everything looked just like the pictures, maybe even more peaceful, more isolated. As soon as he walked in, a faint wooden scent welcomed him. There was an old rocking chair by the fireplace and a few vintage paintings on the walls that added an eerie charm to the place. Outside, he could still hear birds chirping, but as the sun set, even that faded away, and soon there was nothing but the stillness inside the cabin. The Airbnb host gave him a quick call about 2 hours after arrival. "Welcome to Flagstaff, Ethan. Enjoy your stay. Don't worry about anything. You're the only one around. The entry code is unique, and only you have it." Ethan didn't think much of it, just took it as a standard courtesy. The cabin was spotless. The kitchen had all the basics. The bathroom worked fine, and the bedroom had a small closet and a table lamp. But as night fell, Ethan realized the complete silence was a little too real. No traffic, no human voices, just the occasional creaks of the wooden walls and a soft sound of leaves falling. On the roof, he noticed a small security camera mounted in the corner of the living room. It looked like a built-in feature, placed high up in the ceiling with a small red light blinking. He tried turning it off, but the user manual said it was part of the cabin's safety protocol, standard for remote stays. It felt odd, but he let it go and had dinner before heading to bed. Still, he couldn't sleep well that night. The bed was comfortable, but the room had a weird energy, like something was watching him, or like the wooden walls were absorbing every movement he made. Every time he turned in bed, the floorboards creaked beneath him. Once, he thought he heard footsteps in the hallway, but when he opened the door, it was empty. The morning sunlight brought some relief, but Ethan still felt unsettled. He headed to the kitchen, and that's when something caught his eye. One of the chairs, which he remembered tucking neatly under the dining table the night before, was now slightly pulled out at an odd angle. He was sure he hadn't left it like that. Still, he convinced himself, maybe I did it in my sleep, and brushed it off. He fixed the chair, made coffee, and left for work. After a long day of meetings, he returned to the cabin in the evening, but something felt off. The place was the same, but the air felt heavier now, like it wasn't just him breathing in it. He double-checked the door. Still locked, no signs of anyone entering, but that feeling, like someone was quietly watching, it didn't go away. That night, before going to bed, Ethan looked at the security cam again. The red light seemed even brighter. Out of curiosity, he opened the Airbnb app on his phone, trying to access the live feed. There was a feature that let him review past footage. At first, everything looked normal. He saw himself in the kitchen, then walk into the bedroom. But when he reached the clip from 2:53 a.m., the footage glitched. The screen flickered, turned static, then went black for a second. He rewound it, again and again, but every time at exactly 2:53 a.m., the video would glitch, like someone had deliberately edited it. A cold wave ran through his body, and only one question echoed in his mind. If I'm the only one with access to this place, then what happened at 2:53? Ethan stayed up late, replaying the security feed again and again, but there were no answers. Just an empty cabin, an unsettling silence that seemed to grow deeper, and that creeping feeling that maybe he wasn't the only one in that wooden cabin anymore. Ethan spent a long time that day staring at the same corner of the cabin, where he had noticed something strange in the security camera footage the night before. He kept rewinding the clip from 2:53 a.m. On one side, he could see himself sleeping soundly in bed, but in the corner of the room, a faint shadow appeared. At first, it didn't make sense, but as he adjusted the brightness and contrast, his heart nearly stopped. There really was something there. A human-like silhouette, standing perfectly still, not moving, not shifting, not even flinching. Just standing like a statue. The face wasn't clearly visible, but the posture was off, the head slightly tilted, arms hanging low, and the body proportions, they didn't feel right. The eyes looked like dark spots, as if they were absorbing the camera's infrared light. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. This wasn't a glitch, and it wasn't just a trick of the light. Someone was actually standing in that room, while he was asleep. He jumped to his feet, his heart pounding so fast it felt like it might burst through his chest. He searched the entire cabin, every closet, under the kitchen counters, even the bathroom ceiling. Everything was locked, sealed, exactly as he had left it. But deep down he knew something had been there. Terrified, Ethan called 911. Within minutes, 2 officers arrived and searched every inch of the cabin. They even checked beneath the floorboards. But there were no signs of forced entry, nothing out of place. One officer told him, "Sir, we understand your concern, but there's no sign of a break-in. You're probably just overtired." They filed a standard report and left. But for Ethan, the fear hadn't gone away. If anything, it had grown worse. As the police car pulled away, the cabin felt even heavier, more suffocating. He walked over to that same corner in the living room where the silhouette had appeared, and he could almost feel something still standing there, watching him, even if it was no longer visible. He saved the footage as proof and called the Airbnb owner. After a few rings, the call connected. Ethan said seriously, "I need to show you something. It's from your security camera." At first, the owner responded casually. But once Ethan sent the clip and the owner played it, there was a long pause on the other end. Then, in a quiet voice, the owner said, "That's not possible." Ethan asked, "What do you mean, not possible?" And the answer sent chills down his spine. The owner replied, "Sir, you're the first guest in over 3 months. No one else has been there. And the code, I change it every time, only you have it." Before Ethan could respond, the owner added, "That spot, the corner where he's standing, there used to be a trapdoor there. It led to an old underground crawl space, but I sealed it shut 2 years ago. It's just a wall now." Ethan fell silent. He looked back at that corner, and for the first time, he noticed the wood paneling there looked newer, like it had been replaced recently. Staying in that cabin now felt like torture. The nighttime silence wasn't just eerie anymore. It felt like breathing, like someone else was in the room. Ethan kept turning around every few minutes, never turned off the lights, and couldn't stop staring at the security cam. That night, he didn't even try to sleep. He left all the lights on, grabbed a kitchen knife, and sat on the couch in the living room. His eyes were heavy with exhaustion, but his mind wouldn't let him rest. Every shadow made him jump. The sway of the curtains, the faint outline of branches outside, everything started to look like something lurking in the dark. He kept thinking he saw someone standing in that corner again, still, unmoving, watching him. Not through the camera, but through his own eyes. Ethan stayed awake all night. And when it started to rain lightly outside, the sound of raindrops hitting the cabin walls began to mix with something else, soft whispers. He could swear he heard them through the walls, like someone on the other side was saying, "You're not the only one." That night, Ethan decided to go through the footage one more time, this time from the very beginning to the very last frame, second by second, in reverse. He sat down at his laptop, rewound the entire timeline, and started noticing a pattern he had missed before. At exactly 1:03 a.m., there was a faint movement, right in the same corner where that shadow had appeared earlier. At first glance, it looked like nothing, just a slight dark blur, maybe some camera pixels glitching. But when Ethan paused the video and increased the brightness, his breath caught. It wasn't a glitch, it was something. Something slowly crawling. It looked like a person, but not moving like one. It was crawling on all fours, in a twisted, unnatural way, as if it was coming up from under that sealed trapdoor, dragging itself out into the room. And the most terrifying part? The silhouette began slowly moving toward Ethan's bed, inch by inch, stopping for long moments, like it knew when to pause and when to move again. At 4:17 a.m., it was right next to the bed. And then it suddenly dropped lower, crawling under, out of the camera's view. And the clip just ended there. Ethan sat frozen in the chair for several minutes. Then he remembered something. There had been one spot in the cabin that felt off, a soft part of the wooden floor behind the bathroom. Every time he stepped on it, there was a faint creak, like something hollow underneath. He had ignored it before, thinking it was just old wood. But now, he walked over and stood barefoot on it. And this time, he felt a faint vibration. Something was moving underneath. A cold wave ran through his spine. He knelt down and put his ear to the floor. And after a few seconds, he heard it. Very faint but clear, a scratching sound. Like nails scraping wood from underneath. He jumped back, slammed the bathroom door shut, and turned on every light in the cabin. He was sure now, whatever this thing was, it didn't come from outside. It had always been inside the cabin. Maybe for years. Terrified, Ethan replayed that final clip again, this time with headphones, and he noticed something else. Right as the silhouette reached the bed and crawled out of frame, a soft breathing sound could be heard. Very close. Like someone exhaling just inches from the mic. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes. His whole body was shaking. At that moment, his phone buzzed. A message from the Airbnb owner. "Ethan, please don't post that footage online." Ethan didn't respond at first. But then the next message came in, and it shattered him. "I think I know who that is, but I thought he left years ago." Ethan immediately called, but the owner didn't pick up. Another message came in. "He used to live under the house. It was sealed long ago. But maybe he never really left." That was when Ethan began to feel like the walls around him weren't just wood anymore. Like they were alive, like something inside them was listening, watching, and had been for a long time. The next morning, Ethan packed up fast. No breakfast. No goodbye message. He left the cabin key on the table, shut the door, and walked out without looking back. His Jeep sped down the gravel road, and he left Flagstaff behind without stopping once. He never left a review on Airbnb. He deleted all the video files from his laptop. He didn't talk about the cabin, not to his friends, not to his coworkers. But that night, that shadow, and that corner, they never left his mind. I still wonder sometimes, if that thing was down there, is it still there now? Just waiting behind that sealed trapdoor for the next first guest? So friends, that was today's story. There was someone else in the Airbnb. Another chilling entry in our 3 disturbing true scary stories series. A creepy tale that may sound like just a story to some. But sometimes, it's the things you don't see that feel the most real. If this story gave you even a little chill, made you feel disturbed, or left your mind unsettled, don't forget to like this video. Drop a comment and let us know which of the 3 stories creeped you out the most. And if you've ever had a strange or unexplainable experience in an Airbnb, the woods, or some old house, we'd love to hear your story too. And hey, if this is your first time here at Chilling Talks, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, because every week we bring you more true-feeling horror stories that stay with you. The kind you don't listen to during the day, but alone, late at night.